Hello. This is my critical analysis six. Um, so these last few lectures, we talked a lot about the animal kingdom. We spent quite a few lectures on that. Um, just talking about the animal kingdom and its different phylum. Um, and there's like many different groups, different ways that we can group animals. One way we first discussed was the coelom, which is known as a body cavity. Um, Acoelomate individuals have no central body cavity. Pseudocoelomate individuals have a body cavity derived from endoderm and mesoderm. And then eucoelomate or coelomate individuals have a coelom lined with mesoderm. And then we also talked about grouping animals into vertebrates and invertebrates. This is one of the main ways that we group animals. Vertebrates have uh, a vertebral column, spinal cord, those structures um, that backbone. That's what vertebrates have. They have a backbone, while invertebrates lack a backbone. Um, Invertebrates can actually be subdivided into their groups based on their symmetry. Asymmetrical individuals, they have no symmetry or tissue organization. Radial symmetrical individuals, body parts extend from the center of their bodies. Example of that would be like a sea star. And then bilateral symmetrical individuals are mirror images on their right side and left sides externally. Um, so yeah, another thing is like their tissues tend to be well developed. Um, and then we have vertebrates that we talked about as well, which have an endoskeleton that offers support and protect soft parts of different animals. Vertebrates fall into the chordate phylum. So all the chordate animals are vertebrates. Um, and they can also be, excuse me, subdivided into ectotherms and endotherms, which basically is just ectotherms are cold-blooded, which means they change their body temperature to match their surroundings, and then endotherms are warm-blooded and regulate their body temperature so it remains constant. The first phylum we discussed was the Porifera phylum. This phylum is actually made up of mostly sponges, and they're asymmetrical with no true tissues, nerves, muscles, or digestive system. They can reproduce sexually and asexually. Um, and then their asexual reproduction, they produce external buds that detach from each other to form uh, or remain to form colonies. Internal buds called gemmules form during unfavorable periods. They're also capable of fragmentation. And then when they reproduce sexually, the individuals are mostly hermaphroditic, which means that an individual will contain um, the male and female reproductive gametes. Um, their skeletons are composed mainly of calcium carbonate or silicon dioxide spicules or spongin. And then from least to most complex, they can be subdivided into asconoids, cyconoids, and leuconoids. Um, the next phylum we discuss is the Cnidaria phylum. This phylum is made up of your jellyfishes, sea anemones, sea pens, sea whips, and sea fans. Um, these individuals are capable of producing nematocysts, which are stinging cells. So those cells are activated, like say a human got stung by a jellyfish. Those are a result of your nematocysts. Their life cycle has two stages, which are the medusa and the polyp. So it develops from a gamete to a polyp to a medusa. These individuals are radially symmetrical and they have tissues and organs present. They also have mouth and digestive cavity and are capable of asexual and sexual reproduction. Um, Sexually, medusa are formed by liberating sperm and an egg that will form a zygote, which is a twin individual, and then that will eventually develop into a larva, which would develop into a mature polyp. The next phylum we discussed was Platyhelminth phylum. This phylum is made up of flatworms, which are bilaterally symmetrical and asolemate. Um, they are blind. They have a digestive cavity, a simple circulatory system, and its sensory organs are at the front of the organism. Many of these individuals are actually parasitic, while others are grazers. An example of this would be um, one of your tapeworms that humans can have. Those are part of this phylum. And then they go through sexual reproduction hermaphroditically, similar to the periphera. They're also capable of regeneration as well. The next phylum we discussed was the Nemertea phylum, which consists of ribbon worms and proboscis worms. They're bilaterally symmetrical and dorsoventrally flattened. They are also acoelomate. Um, they have a circulatory system with blood vessels, um, and a well-developed nervous system and brain. And they also have through guts with a mouth and an anus. Um, One thing that's really unique about these individuals is that they have an eversible and retractable ectodermal proboscis. They also reproduce asexually by fragmentation and sexually when it is gonochoristic. Let's see. Um, the next phylum we studied was the Rotifera phylum. Individuals in this phylum are bilaterally symmetrical and pseudocoelomate. Their bodies are actually covering an external layer of chitin called lorica. They also have a nervous system with a brain and pair of nerves, but they don't have a circulatory system or respiratory organs. They mostly reproduce parthenogenetically, which doesn't require fertilization of an ovum, but they can also reproduce sexually. The next phylum that we discussed was the Nematode phylum, which consists of your first roundworms. They are also pseudocoelomate individuals with no circulatory system. They have epidermal cells that secrete a thick cuticle. They're also able to enter cryptobiosis, which is similar to hibernation. It's extreme inactivity due to unfavorable environmental conditions. But the thing about them is that they can do it a lot longer than like a bear would typically hibernate. A bear typically hibernates for like one season. Uh, these worms can hibernate for up to like 15 years or so. Um, and they are well adapted to every ecosystem, and many of them are actually parasitic as well. The next phylum that we discussed was the Mollusca phylum. Consists of mollusks, your snails, your clams, your squids, octopi. Um, they have an open circulatory system with blue blood. This is actually because of the presence of your copper, and when copper oxidizes, it turns blue. Um, and then they have a cellum present. They're cellumate, but it's actually greatly reduced. Some of the cephalopods have chromatophores, which help them camouflage. They're mostly bilaterally symmetrical, but some are asymmetrical. They also are unsegmented but have a distinct head. Most mollusks are marine animals. Some can form pearls. They can be subdivided into groups based on their feeding habits. Your Polyplocophora and your gastropoda classes are grazers. Your bivalvia class contains your filter feeders, and then your cephalopods are your active predators. It's also important to note that the cephalopods are extremely intelligent. They can solve different problems, similar to a 3-year-old human. The next phylum we discussed was the Annelida phylum, um, which consists of your annelids, your segmented worms, earthworms, leeches. Their bodies have segmentation. They're also celimate individuals with a closed circulatory system but no heart. They contain a hydrostatic skeleton and also have a simple gut. Um, they also have a defined central nervous system with a brain and a nerve cord. Um, with tactile organs, taste buds, datocysts, photoreceptor cells, and eyes with lenses. Annelids are capable of sexual and asexual reproduction. Next phylum we discuss is the Arthropoda phylum. Um, the arthropods are your insects, your arachnids, and your crustaceans. These individuals have jointed appendages, segmented bodies, and tagmentation, which is your junction of body parts to form one unit. They also have complex sensory systems. Their exoskeleton is formed by chitin, uh, and they grow through a process known as ecdysis. They have an open circulatory system containing hemolymph. These individuals are cellamates with bilateral symmetry. Um, and one important individual from this phylum that we discussed was the horseshoe crab, which humans use their blood in order to test whether vaccines are contaminated or not. Um, these individuals in this phylum produce sexually and asexually. The next phylum that we discussed is the Echinodermata phylum. This phylum consists of sea urchins, sea stars, and sea cucumbers. Um, Individuals in this phylum typically have spiky skin. They contain an exoskeleton. They contain an endoskeleton and exhibit radial symmetry, but the larvae are typically bilaterally symmetrical. They also have tubed feet that are hydrostatic. These individuals are predatory, with specialized mouth parts and appendages for catching and consuming other organisms. They have a complete digestive system that partakes in extracellular digestion. And then, interestingly enough, some starfish can push their stomach out of their mouth and secrete enzymes to help them with digesting food, and breaking down food. Uh, the anus in these individuals is the end of the digestive tract, which is where the waste is excreted. And then the last phylum that we discussed was the Chordata phylum. Um, this phylum had a bunch of subclasses, and apart from the Chordata phylum, all the other phyla that we had listed are invertebrates. The Chordata phylum is the vertebrate phylum. Contains all vertebrate animals. The presence of a dorsal hollow nerve cord, a notochord, a postanal tail, and pharyngeal pouches are all characteristics of this phylum. They're typically bilaterally symmetrical. So now we'll talk about the subclasses, which is the first one was the Agnatha class. Um, these individuals in this class, like jaws, paired fins, and scales, they are marine animals. Um, They do have a notochord rather than a vertebral column. Um, so yeah, and then the next class we discussed was the Placodermi class, which were the first class of fish with jaws, though they did not have true teeth. These fish did not have true teeth. Um, the chondrichthyes, important class. This is the first class of individuals that we see possess jaws with teeth. Um, they don't have bones, um, but they have a cartilaginous skeleton. And like members of this group include sharks, rays, things related to those um things in that class. They do have paired fins and scales, and they typically possess 5 to 7 gills. They have fatty livers because they don't have swim bladders. They have a spiral valve intestine, and they have a heterocercal tail. Um, they're also ureoosmotic, heavy urea in their blood. Um, let's see, the osteothys class. Their individuals possess jaws with teeth. They also have a bony skeleton rather than a cartilaginous skeleton. They're the first ones with bony skeletons, paired fins, um, a simple intestine. They have a swim bladder, different types of scales, and they have a homocercal tail. Um, and this class consists of most of your fish, the rest of your fish. The amphibian class is a class of individuals that live on land, but they do breed in water. Um, they are cold-blooded, and capable of hibernation as well. They go through a process called metamorphosis, which is how they evolve into their adult form. Um, and then their heart actually has 3 chambers. Um, then we talked about the reptilia class. This consists of cold-blooded individuals. Um, it's interesting that a lot of times cold-blooded can be seen as a negative in terms of human societal stipulations. Um, when they say a person is cold-blooded, they typically comparing to reptiles. I thought that was interesting. But yes, reptiles are cold-blooded. They have scales and amniotic eggs. Crocodiles are the only reptiles that don't have a 3-chambered heart. Most other reptiles do have a 3-chambered heart. Um, some groups of reptiles reproduce sexually, while others are capable of asexual reproduction. Um, and then the next class we talked about was the avian class, which consists of birds. Um, and they say this class is believed to have evolved from the dinosaur class because of their uh, anatomical similarities. Aves are warm-blooded with feathers and wings. They have hollow bones and lungs with air sacs that help them fly. Um, the last class that we discussed is the mammalia class. There are a lot of mammals. They can be divided into 3 different groups. These are the protherians, the metatherians, and the eutherians. The protherians are monotremes. They lay eggs, are aquatic predators, and some are poisonous. Examples of monotremes are like echidnas and platypuses. Um, One thing that's unique about them is that they don't have breasts, so when they're feeding their young, their milk oozes from their skin pores. Um, Metatherians are marsupials. They typically have pouches and are most diverse in Australia and South America. They share their tooth shape with placentals as well. Examples of marsupials include like kangaroos. Let's see, opossum. Opossum is the only species of marsupial here in North America. So yeah, and opossum actually lack pouches. They're one of the few marsupial species that lack pouches. Um, and then eutherians are placental animals. So like humans, tigers, bears, those sorts of animals. They nurse their young internally with the placenta, and their offspring are typically more adult-like. They resemble their adult counterparts. Um, Now we talked about humans. Humans are part of the hominoids, along with gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, and gibbons. Um, Humans are said to have evolved from a tree-dwelling species. Characteristics of those have like mobile shoulders, like um, mobile shoulder joints. Um, but yeah, we're said to have evolved from a tree-dwelling species, and we are the only species of humans. There used to be um, two other species, one of those being the Neanderthals, but the Homo sapiens species can killed off the Neanderthal species. So we're the only species of human left.